Just yesterday.
Yeah, I'm going ahead again. I have to get 3 blood ahead. I'm not here Friday, Shabbos, and Sunday. So I'm trying to get ahead. Oh, you know what? Oh, here, my pen. So let's see. So yesterday, the Gemara that we learned about, yesterday was, let's see, we learned about the Shaila of Kedusha, Rishayna, Kitchel, Shaita, or Kitchel, Asad. The Gemara said that the Makor for Meiser Sheni, that we don't bring it Bizman Azeh, is from Bechor, and Bechor we learned Hekesh, the Gemara said that there wasn't Hekesh from Dam to Basar. So there was an interesting case there where right before the Churban Bayis, they spritzed the blood of a Bechor Behema, of course, and then the Beis Hamikdash was Chorev. Now there's no Beis Hamikdash. Can you or can you not eat the meat? So there's a hekesh from dam to basar, just like for dam, and you need to have the Beis Hamikdash standing. So too for the basar, you cannot eat the basar because we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, and that we pass on through a hekesh to Ma'aser Sheni. That since there's no Beis Hamikdash, there's no kedusha, and therefore you don't bring your Ma'aser Sheni to Yerushalayim because there is no Yerushalayim to bring it to. Now we're up to another halacha, which it says in our Mishnah. So if we go back to our Mishnah, we'll see the halacha that the Gemara is going to discuss. And the interesting thing about it is it seems to be a repeat of a halacha that we learned at the beginning of our parak. So it says over here, but we're focusing on is Ma'aser Sheni. You ate Ma'aser Sheni, you get malchus, right? The problem is, in the first Mishnah it said, if you ate Ma'aser Sheni Shaloi Niftu, you weren't poided, obviously out of Yerushalayim, you get malchus. So why would this Mishnah repeat the exact same item that the first Mishnah listed? That is what the Gemara's kasha is today. Kacha kachim v'chulu, referring to Ma'aser Sheni, that Ma'aser Sheni that you ate, chutz l'chayma, you're chayiv malchus, tanina chad zimna, we already learned this same halacha in the first Mishnah, Ma'aser Sheni v'hekta Shaloi Niftu, you get malchus if you eat. And for the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina, Seifa the Ma'aser Sheni tar v'gavatar. Our Mishnah is speaking about when the Ma'aser Sheni is tar, the person is tar, and you ate it out of the chayma. There's a law not to eat. You're not allowed to eat Ma'aser Sheni out of Yerushalayim. What is the Reisha talking about? Reisha b'Ma'aser Sheni tamei the gaver tamei the ka'achale b'Yerushalayim. All the Reisha says is you ate Ma'aser Sheni Shaloi Niftu. Doesn't say under what circumstances you ate it. Doesn't say where you ate it. So Zok Rabbi Yossi, it means you ate it in Yerushalayim. So you're not getting malchus for eating it in Yerushalayim. That's our Mishnah. There you're getting malchus for eating it because either you were tamei when you ate the Ma'aser Sheni or the Ma'aser Sheni was tamei. Zok to Gemara umino lei the machayev alei mishum tamei. How do you know, in fact, that there is a lav to eat Ma'aser Sheni when it's tamei, or to eat Ma'aser Sheni when you are tamei? How do you know b'chalal that there is such a lav? The Tanya, we have a brisa. Now, in the middle of reading the brisa, a couple of things happened. First of all, before the brisa can finish, the Gemara jumps in and attacks. And another thing that happened in the middle of this brisa is Rashi Zatzal was nifter. If we're speaking of Rashi being nifter, I believe today is the Yortet of Chaim Vital. And I read a news article on Vasanayis that Reb Chaim Vital's kever is in Jordan, and it was vandalized over the weekend. I don't know if I would want to start up with Reb Chaim Vital near his yard site. I don't know what's going to happen to those guys, but it would have been best had they left it alone. So I'm waiting to watch the next news article that comes out about that.
Dead rabbi killed.
Uminalon, how do you know you get malchus when you are eating Ma'aser Sheni when either you're a tamei or the Ma'aser Sheni is tamei? The Tanya we learned. Rab Shimon says. So we're quoting this is a Tosefta or Sefra from Rab Shimon, and this is what he said, and we're going to interrupt. Loi bi'arti mimenu b'tamei, bein shani tamei v'hutar, bein shani tar v'hutamei. In the Vidui Maisris, it's clearly not allowed to. But we need to find a lav. So Freik the Brisa, v'heichen muzer alachila. Where is this lav? And you I don't know. And now the Gemara loses patience, and the Gemara is not even waiting for the Brisa to Firois, and the Gemara is jumping in. What do you mean? Tumas aguf be'edjiksiv. How could the Brisa say Ein Yedea? It's a Forsha person. that when one is tamei, one may not eat ma'aser sheni. What does it say in the pasuk? Let's look at the psukim inside. It's much more geschmack when we read the whole pasuk inside. It says nefesh asher tiga boy v'tam arar. Someone who touches his tummy until night. So how do you know this is speaking about ma'aser sheni? Maybe it's speaking about a korban, the kochim. So Rashi says, we all know that if one is tamei and they want to eat kochim, it's not enough to go to the mikveh. They have to wait for harav shemesh. But here it says kim rochatz b'sar b'mayim. The only item that you're allowed to eat before harav shemesh, right after tefillah, that you're not allowed to eat your tummy, of course, is ma'aser sheni. So this pasuk is telling us that you're not allowed to eat ma'aser sheni if you're tummy. Kavaltik. Elatumas atzmoy minayim. How do we know that if the meiser is tamei, that you're not allowed to eat the meiser? The chsiv, it says in the pasuk, and this is an interesting. This pasuk lesuchal lechel b'sharecha we are very familiar with. So let's look over here. It says lesuchal lechel b'sharecha. That's Rabbi Shimon's favorite pasuk, right? Ma'aser degoncha v'siroishcha v'yitzarecha u'b'chayis b'karcha v'tzoncha v'chol derecha asher titar. Don't eat b'sharecha. The Gemara darshans don't eat it in the situation that's referred to by the word sharecha. What is that situation? Let's look at what the Torah says, Lagabe, a Bechor that had a Balmum that you were paida. It says, Bisharecha teichlanu, this you're allowed to eat, is psule mekdashim sheniftu, you're allowed to eat, hatomei v'atar yachtav, say a person who's tomei and say a person who's tar, which right away tells you a tomei is allowed to eat, psule mekdashim sheniftu, and once he touches it and eats it, if he's eating together with someone who's tar, it became tamei, and now the tar person is eating this psula mikdashim, while the psula mikdashim is tamei. Yachtav katzvi v'cha'ayah. So Zok to Gemara, that defines what the scenario is of bisharecha. So it says lasucha bisharecha ulahalanu oimer bisharecha toichlanu atamei v'atar. V'tanya devei Rabbi Shmuel afilu tamei v'tar oichlin b'kar achas v'ein choishin. Clearly, that means Saif, you're Tomei, Saif, the Michael is Tomei. Become a Rachmana, and the Rachmana says, Heich Tomei, the Sharilach, Gabe, Bechor, the Bach changes the Gersa, that Tuma, meaning if you're Tomei, or if the Michael is Tomei, that the Torah allows you to do in the word Bisharecha by the Bechor, Hasam, over there, Hachaloi Seichel. Here it's Loi Suchal Bisharecha. Don't eat the meiser, the gontcha, and all the other items in the list under these conditions. Gewaltig. Now, while Rashi was writing Rashi was nifter during this, and you're going to see that when the Rivan took over, he didn't just took over from Rashi when Rashi left off. He went back to review to create a little continuity. So let's just have a look at this because it's very interesting to see how this transition occurred. Very litfish, without fanfare, no big inaugurations. The Gangan, the Rashi finished. He took him out, and then the item got in, and he started saying shir. No problem. So what does it say over here? So first we have Rashi.
And who wrote those words?
I'm not sure. That was the whole ceremony. So they didn't make such a production about death anymore. Nowadays it's a whole matzah buses. A vice, it's a knack, it's a tumult, and there's newspaper articles and videos posted on Vasanayis and on the Shiva World News. There was just a little thing. That's right. So Hachi says, I actually want to point out, see if we can put that. I don't have any answers to this, but I want to look at Rashi's pshat, and then side by side we're going to see the Rivan's pshat, and let's see if we can pick up nuances, differences. So it says as follows: Kaki shnuya b'safri. This is how the Bryce is quoted in Safri. Uchishe kavua kan, when the Gemara quoted that Safri here in the Gemara, lo yespiku legoimra. The Gemara couldn't finish quoting the full Safri ada akshi Gemara until the Gemara jumped in and asked the question: Tumas aguf b'ediksiv. How could you say you don't know? How could the Bryce say he doesn't know where we know Tumas aguf is prohibited? It's a mafurish pasuk v'lo yochol menakotchim ki imrochats u'mekminin lo b'yavamis b'ma'aser sheni. In Yavamis, the Gemara tells us that this pasuk is referring to Ma'aser Sheni. Midichsiv ki imrochats. Harochatz would be tar. The taval va'ola oichel b'ma'aser. You don't need harav shemesh. And right now, Rabbeinu Gufay tar. He was a kaddish for tar. The yotzin shmosay b'tahira maybe with the following word of Tov of Allah, maybe Rachat Tar, one of these words here, when he said Tar, Rashi's Neshama left him, Loi Pir Shoiser. And Rashi's Pshat is now over. The Kan Ve'elech Loshen Talmidoi, who was Rabbi Yehuda Bar Nosson. So now let's see how Rabbi Yehuda Bar Nosson, who's taking over for Rashi, let's see how he did. So I have to slide into the Bach, already we have trouble. Rashi's gone, now there's already trouble to Gersa. Eini Yodea, Kachu Loshen Habraisa. This is the Loshen Habraisa. Eini Yodea, Heichon Muzar Al Kach. Talmud Loimar Loi Sucho. Vashas Loi Shovek Lei La Suke Lim Milse. The Shas didn't let the Brisa finish being quoted. Elakadim Uparach Umatame Amai Kamer Ein Yodeya Hatuma Shaguf Behed Yoksiva. It says Nevesh Asher Tiga Boy V'lo Yochim Nakochim Kim Rachat B'Sarei B'Mayim. For Aminan B'Yavamis, and we said in Yavamis, the Ikrab and Ma'aser Sheni Kamer the Tal of All Oichel. Well, Alanu Emir B'Bechor Balmum. It says B'Sharechat Echlanu Ule'um Niksiv Ki Yibaymum. So we know speaking about a Balmum. Afilu Tami V'Tar, there even the Tami and the Tar can eat together off the same plate. The Avagav the Osher Begiza V'Avoda. Psulim Mikosh V'Sheniftu, you're not allowed to do Giza and Avoda, you're not allowed to use the animal to do work, you're not allowed to shear it, you're only allowed to eat its meat. Kedamin B'Chol Avas Navshach Tizbach V'Yachalta Basar. So we dash in Tizbach as V'Loi Giza, V'Yachalta V'Loi L'Klavecha, you must eat it, you can't serve it to your dogs. Basar V'Loi Cholov. Afilu Achi, nevertheless, does have certain restrictions because it's still Psulim Mikdoshim, but L'Gabi Tumah Tahara, there's no restrictions. The necholim betumas aguf uvetumas atma. How do you see that? If a tummy is eating it, hainu betumas aguf. Oichel atar, someone whose tummy is eating this kachim that's tahar. Ucheshatar oichel imoy la'achish nagaboy, and when the tar person is eating together with this person whose tummy after he already touched the food and was mitameit, hainu tar oichel. Tumas atzmoi she'achal as a tummy, he's eating product at tummy. So the Gemara goes on high tummy the shirai lechosam, the same tumah that under the b'sharecha, the Torah says you're allowed to eat it. The bechor balmum the chsiv b'sharecha hacha gabi meiser, it says loy sucha lechel b'sharecha. The hainu loy sucha lechel b'sharecha kloimer yet rishai lechel meiser sheni b'tarish bechor. You're not allowed to eat meiser sheni that's in the same situation as the bechor was in the other pasuk shekasav by b'sharecha. The balmum the bechor is nechal b'tumas atzma b'tumas agov, but v'zeh aser. So, does anybody notice any difference in how the Rivan expressed his pshat? I know it's 3 times as long as Rashi, but I can't say that I was able to be medayik a difference in pshat. But we're now under new management. We're under new management. Dor hoylech v'dor ba. Someone, there's a famous saying, Yiftach b'doyroi k'shmuel b'doyroi. Even though Yiftach was not as great as a shofet as Shmuel was, but at every generation we have to treat our leaders just like Shmuel Hanavi was treated in his days. So there was a story once with the Matas Tafaruf where there was a Rav who was really bad, inappropriate. So someone told the Matas Tafaruf, Nunu, what can you do? Yiftach b'dor k'shmuel b'dor. That's why they know time to get a bunim. So the outskipping a beat, the Master Ruv said, "V'chiyiftach ish bor." You think Yiftach was chopped liver? Yiftach is auch gewein epis hamensh. This Ruv is not even there. Okay, zog to Gemara weiter. So now we have found the makar for the Mishnah's halacha that you're not allowed to eat ma'aser sheni when the ma'aser sheni is tamei, nor when the person is tummy, which is we're in the middle of interrupting the Sifri that we quoted from Rav Shimon. Okay, so where are we up to? The Gemara already. Now that we're off on a tangent, we're not even going back to finish the brisa. We got what we needed already, so we can move on. The bar padiyah. Now it says in the Mishnah, you ate ma'aser sheni shaloi nifta. Right, that's where you're getting petch. It's out of Yerushalayim and it wasn't redeemed, or it was in Yerushalayim and the Talmud that wasn't redeemed. Question: how do you know you can be paid? And our Mishnah says you ate it when it's tamei. Yeah, our Mishnah is going back on our Mishnah. Our Mishnah you ate it when it's you ate ma'aser sheni shaloi niftu. So it's mashma that you're supposed to be pointed, but it's in Yerushalayim and it's tamei. Who said you're allowed to be pointed? We know you're allowed to be pointed something when it's out of Yerushalayim. In Yerushalayim, we know in the Bar Pitiyu, we had this Gemara before. The base will remind us. It was Sanhedrin Kuf Yud Beis, right? The Omar Rabbi Lozer Minayin Lemaiser Sheni Shenitma Shapoidin Oisai. How do you know you can be pointed Afilu Bi Yerushalayim even though it's in Yerushalayim? Talmud Loimar. Let's look at the psukim inside because they are very relevant. This is the Hey V'chiyirbe Mimcha Haderech. You're too far away from Yerushalayim. Pashim Pshat is you cannot carry it all the way to Yerushalayim. Because you are far away. We're going to soon see what far away means. It's not nearly as far as you think. And the next pasuk says you could be pointed. So Zok Rabbi Lozer, it says what does seisoi mean? You think it means carrying? No. But in seis el achila, you cannot eat it, even though it's in Yerushalayim. But for some reason you cannot eat it, such as because it's tamei. How do you know seisoi means eating? Shenemar by Yosef Atzadik, when he gave the brothers food, it says Vayisa Masois Me'ez Panav. So you see, Masois is referring to rations, it's referring to eating. So therefore, Kalesuchos Eisoi, if for some reason you cannot eat as Ma'aser Sheni, for instance, because of Tamei, the pasuk says there, just like if it's far away, you can be pointed. Amar Abibi, Amar Abasi, Minayin LaMa'aser Sheni Tahar, Shapoid Noisoi Afilu Bepsia Achas Chus L'Chayim. So how much is the Chiyirchak? If it's 1 footstep out of Yerushalayim, that's already too far. And therefore you could be pointed. Shenemar says, Kalesuchal Sa'esai. Frank Gemara, didn't we just use this Kalesuchal Sa'esai to teach us that if you can't eat it because it's Tomei, that's a reason why you could be pointed? We need Kalesuchal Sa'esai to teach us a different halacha. Dr. Gemara, you can extract double, let me just finish, you can extract double meaning from it. Because if it only meant to say that it's tamei, why express achila with a weird lotion of seisai? My seisai. So seisai means to tell you is that you can't carry it. Frank Gemara, so if it means you can't carry it, maybe that's all you know from lesuchal seisai, that is 1 footstep out. Who said that you could also learn from here if it's tamei? So which is a much more obvious lotion of carrying it. So Eza is par, if it's not in ganzen eating, it's not in ganzen litloi. Therefore, Shmami Notarti, about the Torah used this lotion that's sort of in the middle. We could say the Torah is teaching you if the reason why you can't eat it in Yerushalayim is either because you can't eat it because it's tamei, or because it's not there, it's out of Yerushalayim. Either way, you'd be allowed to be pointed. So, everybody, you want to ask something?
Actually, where in the world we have something where a foot or not a foot makes a difference? No.
By Ma'aser Sheni.
It doesn't make sense.
Let me ask you a question.
There's a line.
What about by Uri Miklat?
Yeah.
If you're in, you're out, you're out. Same thing with this.
Exactly.
This is the same thing.
No, it's opposite.
Why?
We're for some reason assuming that 1 foot towards your slope.
No, it means you're right out of line. This means
you're so close.
Psia Achas means Psia Achas, your kasha will be very relevant in a moment. But right now, it's the line. If it's in Yerushalayim, you cannot be pointed if it's Tor, and if it's out of Yerushalayim, you could be pointed. That's what it means now. But your kasha will be very relevant in a minute. Because we'll very soon see here doesn't mean here and there doesn't mean there.
We're saying the Chiddush, you may think that it's only if it's a half a mile out.
Correct.
Or maybe 2.5 miles out.
As Rashi says, Alpha Gav the Yerchak, the Mashmatuva,
Logic tells you.
No, logic says there's a line. The line is the
Well, the
wall.
reason why you're being pointed is because you can't carry it.
So then maybe two
that's the
steps.
normal thing.
So maybe two.
So could you hold your kasha? Because look what the Gemara does. The Gemara actually analyzes more what Losuchal Sa'esoi means. And it's not so pashut. So let's have a look. Yosy Reb Chanina, Reb Oishia, and let's look at the gears of Rashi in the Bach. Yosy Reb Chanina, Reb Oishia, Apischa, the Yerushalayim, B'Kamei. So they probably were sitting and saying, if we're here at the entrance to Yerushalayim, let's clear shalas that are relevant in this place, right? I'm assuming that's what happened. And this was the shaila that they said. What if pshita it's pashut, hu b'chutz, if the person who has the Ma'aser Sheni has it loaded on a knapsack, right? Hu b'chutz, he's about to cross into Yerushalayim, but his body is physically out of Yerushalayim. Umasoi b'fnim, but his backpack, I guess it's not his back, it's his front back, or his wheelbarrow is in the front of him, so that's in. Can you be put to such Ma'aser Sheni? So Rav Moshe would say, of course, Kol Tu Mechitzos. The Ma'aser Sheni is inside. But what about Hu b'fnim umasoi b'chutz? What if it's not a wheelbarrow? What if it's a wagon? So it's right behind him. So I don't want to use it. We should use backpack because a wagon might fall to a different category. So Masai b'chutz, now what would Allah be? That was exactly the shayla. Tanalu, who Saba, b'devei Rab Shimon Yochi, and an El to the Yid in the Besmedish of Rab Shimon Yochai, he said, and I could say the Blima strikes again because it's almost like Blima, right? Ki yirchak mimcha hamakoim, mimcha we learn mimilu acha. Your whole person. If it's on your person, if it's anywhere in your person that's in Yerushalayim, that'll be good. But if it's not on your person, then it wouldn't be in Yerushalayim. Let's have a look at how Rashi describes miluach. Mikol milushalach, from your entire person, your whole entourage. To me, what it means is, when I met Rabbi Shmuel and I was very heavy, he says, Yeshiv Zalman, you didn't have to bring your ganze farmegen along, right? So your whole matziv, Umasa shal adam choshev miluay. The load that someone is carrying is called miluay. It's on this person. The loitema mimcha only means a mimiktzoscha, only part of you. The kol zaman shirachak miktzoscha yanifta. Even if only part of it is out of Yerushalayim, you can be pointed. No. You could only be pointed if the whole situation, the whole matzav there is out of Yerushalayim. So therefore, even if the Ma'aser Sheni is out of Yerushalayim, but you're in Yerushalayim, it's on your backpack, it's called that it's in Yerushalayim. Therefore, b'shuv lo sifta elo b'achalta sham. So that's why I wanted to wait till we got to this point, because you see, inside and outside isn't clearly defined by where the actual Ma'aser Sheni is. It's your being. If part of your being is in Yerushalayim, and the Ma'aser Sheni is on your being too, we consider the Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim. So this is different than a Miklat.
Yeah, we talked about.
No, this is not. This is Torah.
A couple of days ago, we talked about Bikurim. We said, Mamish, a Bikurim is, there's one thing.
The threshold, when you cross the threshold. Yeah.
What's inside is inside, what's outside is outside.
That's right.
We seem to be
Well,
quite.
yesterday. It wasn't a couple of days yesterday. And really it's today, because today's not. We're in the time machine now.
We were quite happy on that.
Yeah. That's how it works by Bikurim. Because then say Mimcha. Here it says Mimcha. Mimcha we learn Mimiluacha.
We have what's not, like, we stopped considering a wall, a line is a line.
No, Mimcha means don't look at the line. Look at where your person is and your whole matzah. Right? So you look at the whole picture. You don't just look at precisely where that is. So Zok the Gemara, Boy Rav Papa. What if it's Noket Lebekanya? You're inside and you have a long stick, and the Ma'aser Sheni is the end of the long stick out of Yerushalayim. Is that Lamais is on your person, so it's considered in? Or no, it's not mamish on you, it's not on your person. That's why I wasn't sure what to do with a wagon. I wanted to stay away from a wagon, because a wagon might be like Nokat Lebekani Mai, and that the Gemara says take you. Now, at the end of the Gemara today, this Shaila of our Papa is going to be decided upon, at least according to Ravina. Omar Ravasi, Omar Yochanan. Ma'aser Sheni, Me'imosai Chayav in Olah. At what point are you chayiv? I'm sorry? Because Rav Papa obliges to take it. Ravina had the answer. Rav Papa might disagree with Ravina, right? Rav Papa still has a shver. He still doesn't have the clear answer. At what point are you going to be mechuyev for eating Ma'aser Sheni out of Yerushalayim? Because now it's considered in Yerushalayim. Zokt the Gemara, it's Mishra Pnei. Once it sees the wall. And Rashi says very clearly, it means when it sees the inside of the wall. As Rashi says, Mishayira Pnei. First of all, Rashi changed it from Mishra to Mishayira. And then Yankee Samsonovich pointed out yesterday that you need to make note of the difference in the expression. But Rashi says, V'chutz l'choyma de masnisin, that it says chutz l'choyma, if you ate Ma'aser Sheni chutz l'choyma, hainu the aile va'avke. It means you took it in. Now Now Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim was koilate it, and you took it back out. Now you're going to be chayiv for eating the Ma'aser Sheni out, and you can no longer be paid. Zok to Gemara. My timer. Where do we know this from? The Omar Kra. It says Lefnei Hashem Toichelenu. So let's look at the Gimel and the Zayin. So we have these two psukim. The first pasuk says, "Kiyim Lefnei Hashem Alekecha Toichelenu." V'mokem Meshiyivcha Hashem Alekecha Boi Atavincha Uvitecha Uvavdecha V'Masecha V'Levi Asher B'Sharecha. Samach Lefnei Hashem Alekecha V'Chol Mishlach Yidecha. But the focus is Kiyim Lefnei Hashem Alekecha Toichelenu. You have to eat it only in Yerushalayim. But there's another pasuk that says further up, Loi Sucha Lechol B'Sharecha Masa Degancha Terosh V'Yitzarecha. You're not allowed to eat out of Yerushalayim. You're not allowed to eat the Ma'aser Sheni. So the Gemara makes the following drasha and the relation between these two psukim. It says Lefnei Hashem Alekecha Toichelenu. Iksiv Loi Sucha Lechol B'Sharecha. So Zok to Gemara, Kol Echad Dekarin Bei Lefnei Hashem Alekecha Toichelenu. The moment you come into Yerushalayim with the Ma'aser Sheni, and now it's under the rule of if it's in Yerushalayim, you can eat it. From that point on is triggered Lo Sucha Lechol B'Sharecha. From that point on is triggered the law that you're not allowed to eat this Ma'aser Sheni out of Yerushalayim anymore. It can no longer be played.
Here we have the wall.
Here we have the wall.
That's different than.
Well, no, because that wall might be Mimcha, right? That wall might be Mimcha. Might be the same Mimcha that the Zakanim by Yerushalayim talked about earlier.
I mean, could we even say in this part that it could mean a step away? That a step away makes a difference in two.
Yeah, we know, whether it's in or out might be the way it's explained by the Rabbi Chanina. The point that we're trying to make here only is that the lav to eat it out of Yerushalayim is only once it was niklat. How it gets niklat is still a discussion. But if it was never in a situation where you could now eat it because it's in Yerushalayim, there loy karinon bay loy sucha lechol b'sharech. So there's no lav. I don't know if it's a mitzvah to eat out. Still not supposed to eat it outside of Yerushalayim, but the lav only applies once it's already been in Yerushalayim and it was in a situation where you should eat it b'sharech. Freik the Gemara Kasha, meisvei. So what we just learned here is that until the produce entered Yerushalayim, there's no lav to eat it out of Yerushalayim, right? So, Frank the Gemara from a brisa of Rabbi Yosy. Very interesting case. Rabbi Yosy Omer, Kohen shall also be other tevel. So the Kohen was processing his own tevel, and he had a beautiful, delicious, big, fat fig. And it's tevel, so he's not allowed to eat it. So he had to start being mesaken it. So what he did was, he said, Omer te'enazu trumasa b'uktzah. First, I'm being mafish truma. A Kohen has to be mafish truma as well. He can eat his own truma, but he has to be mafish. So he's holding on to the okitz, he's holding on to the stem. The side of the te'ena that's closest to the stem, I want that to be the truma for the rest of this fig. He has to be mafish ma'aser rishon as well. Ma'aser rishon b'tzvayna. The ma'aser rishon will be on the left side, marshal, of the fig. U'ma'aser sheni, and I'll also be mafish ma'aser sheni is l'deraima. Now, the hishnas ma'aser sheni, if it was a year of Ma'aser Sheni, who be Yerushalayim, and he is in Yerushalayim. So that's one scenario that we're painting. Meaning the Kohen did all the afroshes, but he's missing one afrosha. Do you know which afrosha he's missing? Anybody know? Trumas Ma'aser is what's missing. So the only tevel here is the truma portion is tevel. Or another scenario, instead of us talking about this happening in Yerushalayim, this could have happened chutz Yerushalayim, but it wasn't the year where Ma'aser Sheni was separated. It was the third year where Ma'aser Oni is separated. Oy Ma'aser Oni v'hu b'gvul. So let's say one of these two scenarios occurred. Ochla, at this point, the Kohen ate this fig. Loika, as he gets one set of malchus, as Rav Moshe said, because the Ma'aser is tevel because he was not yet mafish trumas ma'aser. What if the Yisrael ate it under the same circumstances? The Zor Shachla, like Ishtaim, he gets twice malchus because he ate truma as well. The ma'aser that he ate is not a problem. A Zor is allowed to eat ma'aser, but he ate truma as well. However, Zok the Brisa, Zok Rabbi Yosy the Brisa, She'ilu b'tchila achla. Had the Kohen, I'm sorry, had the Yisrael eaten it before any hafrashas were done, he would have been better off because it was one big tevel. But now that it was partially misukam, there's a problem of truma here, and there's a problem of tevel for the trumas meiser. So now let's drill down to analyze this price. Time made the Isay B'Yerushalayim. It's mashma that the only reason why his malchus is limited to 2 because he doesn't get petch for eating the Meiser Sheni. Habak Vulan. But if this occurred out of Yerushalayim, then like a sholish, he would get another set of malchus for eating Meiser Sheni out of Yerushalayim. The problem is, this Meiser Sheni never made its way into Yerushalayim. So according to what we just said, that Meiser Sheni, you don't get malchus for eating it out of Yerushalayim until it once upon a time entered Yerushalayim. This Meiser never entered Yerushalayim. The Avogab the Lav Roya Pnei Chayma. This Meiser never made it into Yerushalayim. This whole story happened to Gulin, and we're giving this fellow malchus for eating Meiser Sheni Chutz L'Chayim. That's the Gemara's kasha. And for the Gemara, who said that's the case? Maybe it's the Eili Ba'avke. Maybe the deek that you're going to make that Habakvul like a Shalosh is only if you first brought the Meiser Sheni into Yerushalayim and then left, that's when there would be 3 malchus. Break the Gemara, Ihaki Maila Memra. What's the whole chiddush of this? We want to be able to make a deek Habakvul like a Shalosh because the Bride is clearly telling you halacha so that you could be medayik Habakvul like a Shalosh, but there's no chiddush in that because everybody knows that if you eat Meiser Sheni out of Yerushalayim, you get malchus. I don't need this Bride to tell me that. There must be more of a chiddush here. Zokt Gemara, so I'll tell you pshat. So if you're going to learn that even if it never was in Yerushalayim, Meiser Sheni eaten out of Yerushalayim gets malchus, so that's in and of itself a chiddush because it argues with what we said a moment ago. But if you're going to learn, like you're learning, that you don't get malchus unless it came into Yerushalayim, and this case is where it came into Yerushalayim first, then what's the chiddush? Zokt Gemara, I'll tell you what the chiddush is. The Meiser Sheni, after you separated it, it never came to Yerushalayim. But before you were mafresh to Meiser Sheni, the fig came into Yerushalayim, then it came back out of Yerushalayim, and then you were mafresh to Trumas and Meisers. So the question is, it was never Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim. Why is there a problem? Dr. Gemara, the Kasavar Matanoi Shaloi Hurmu Kamisha Hurmu Damya. This is Tevel. You brought a fig of Tevel into Yerushalayim. It has Matanos that you have to separate from it. You're mechuyev to separate Meiser Sheni from it. Even though you have not yet separated that Meiser Sheni, we treat it as if it was, and therefore we say that Yerushalayim is koilet, and now the lav is triggered. You're not allowed to eat it out of Yerushalayim. A kohen had a delicious big fat fig that was tevel. He took it into Yerushalayim, and then he left Yerushalayim, and then he was mafresh the trumas and meisros.
Where is it now?
Right now, it's out of Yerushalayim. So the halacha is, if you eat that Meiser Sheni out of Yerushalayim, you get malchus. Because since in its tevel state, it was in Yerushalayim, we look at it like it was already hufrash. Why is that? Because there's a rule. Matanoi shaloi hormu kemisha hormu lamyo. Once something is grown, if you didn't take off the trumas and maishris, we treat it as if the trumas and maishris have been separated, and therefore the Yerushalayim will be cleansed.
So just going back a couple lines, does that stem with what we said about whether he separated the trumas meiser or not? He says if he didn't separate the trumas meiser, he'd have one of there. If he separated the trumas meiser, it'd be 2 of theirs. According to this, he should still get 2 malchus because Kanisha Humadami, so it's as though Trumas Meiser was already separated. The same idea. You should get 2 and not 1.
So you think based on this, what does it say? If he hadn't separated it, he would only get malchus for tevel. You're asking me why wouldn't he also get malchus for eating Meiser Sheni out of Yerushalayim?
No, for eating Trumas Meiser. A second issue of
He's getting malchus for eating Meiser that the Trumas Meiser wasn't separated, right? That's what the Brisa says. The kohen is loikaful, right?
we said Zor Shachla, like a stein.
But this is all in Yerushalayim. This is in Yerushalayim. What you're reading occurred in Yerushalayim. So there's no Malchus in Yerushalayim for eating Ma'aser Sheni out of Yerushalayim. So I don't understand what is your question. Please explain it to me again.
Why is the Zor Shachla like a stein?
Because he's eating Truma. A Zor is not allowed to eat Truma. And the Zor is not allowed to eat Meiser, Shalai Hermu Trumas Meiser.
Right.
So there's two laws in there.
Okay, but if
Right.
Like
That's right. It's Tevel.
Yeah, but if we're saying it's Kamisha Hermadome,
but he's in Yerushalayim.
We're not talking about my.
But it's in Yerushalayim. You're allowed to eat Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim. This Bryce is talking about in Yerushalayim. Time of the Isay Yerushalayim. He's in Yerushalayim. And yes, it's as if the Ma'aser Sheni was separated, but you're allowed to eat Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim.
We're not talking about Ma'aser Sheni.
I'm sorry?
We're
talking about a fig. Any Isurim that you'll be over by eating this fig are as follows. What are the list of Isurim that one would be over by eating this fig? Isur number 1 is he's eating Truma. Isur number 2, he's eating Meiser, that Trumas Meiser has not been separated, but there's no other issue. What else is he doing wrong?
Okay, and so why is it like a 1? He should be like a 2 because it's Kamisha Herma, and therefore there should.
You mean for the Trumas Meiser?
Yes.
I mean, we should look at it like he was already Mafresh Meiser.
If that's the Shita,
no, because if you look at it, but you're right. You're splitting it up because you're looking at it like he was Mafresh Meiser, but not Trumas Meiser.
Right.
That's splitting it in half.
He was Mafresh Truma on the Ukitz, but he wasn't Mafresh the Meiser Mina Meiser.
No, the Meiser Meiser is not on the Truma. It's on the Meiser. So you're saying he was Mafresh Meiser, but why? But if he wasn't Mafresh the Meiser yet, you're saying. So take it a step further. So then say he was mafresh the matanash he was mafresh the meiser and the meiser as well. You're applying matanash halfway. You're saying it's as if he was mafresh meiser rishon, but it's not as if he was mafresh the meiser. So then there's no problem. So why would he get malchus?
Why is it like Achas? Be like Stein.
Why would it be like a Stein? He's not eating tevel.
Perfect.
Everything was separated. It was beautiful. The only issue that he ate now is truma. It's mamish perfect. Okay, so Zok to Gemara, the Chasavar Matana Shalahirma Kamisha Hormudam. So this whole shtickle works under the premise that Rabbi Yosy holds Matana Shaloi Hormu Kamisha Hormudam. So that's beautiful. The problem is Rabbi Yosy doesn't hold like that. And this is where we have our issue. Now we always know that if you have a choice of aligning yourself with Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel, who you're going to hold like? Beis Hillel. So we're going to quote Rabbi Yosy's version of a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and the assumption will be that Rabbi Yosy holds like Beis Hillel, and that's going to lead to us seeing that he must hold Matana Shlehermu Lav Kamisha Hormidon. Frank Gemara, sorry, Rabbi Yosy Matana Shlehermu Kamisha Hormidon. But Tanya we learned Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabbi Yosy. So this is Rabbi Yosy talk. Lo nechlugu Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel. There is no machlokes. Everybody's in agreement. Al peirosh shaloi nigmura malachta. Now we know that while you're going through the process of harvesting and storing your peiros, at a certain point, it gets triggered the chiyuv to take off trumas and maishus. Before that point, it's not tevel. Only it's nismarch b'kri. You piled it up in a pile. Whatever that gemar malach is, there's a certain point where the isur tevel is triggered and the chiyuv to be mafresh trumas and maishus are triggered. Everybody agrees if you have not yet reached that point, the over Yerushalayim and your produce was in Yerushalayim, there we say sheyifte meiser sheni shalahem. You could still be paid to the meiser sheni. Why? Because we don't consider it kamisha hormu damyon. Because we don't consider it like there's meiser sheni here. Because we're not even in the stage of tevel yet. And therefore, you can eat it anywhere. Yerushalayim wasn't koilet, the Meiser Sheni of Tevel that's not even Tevel yet. So where is there a discussion? Al perishin nigram malachta. So you have pairs that now have an Isser Tevel triggered and already has the chiyuv to be Mavish Trumas or Maishus. And these Tevel pairs, the over Yerushalayim, they were brought into Yerushalayim. At that point, Beis Shammai Oimrim Yachzir Meiser Sheni Shalahem. When you separate the Meiser Sheni, even though you only separated the Ma'aser Sheni, once you took it out of Yerushalayim, it's already too late. You cannot be part of this Ma'aser Sheni anymore. Since in its Tevel state, it was in Yerushalayim, it's Koilet, which is Matana Shaloi Hermu, Kamisha Hermu Damyan. But even though it was in the state of Tevel in Yerushalayim, then you took it out of Yerushalayim and you actually were mafresh the Ma'aser Sheni, that's not a problem. You can be poided v'yoichel b'chol makom. Zok the Gemara v'isol kedaitach matana shelo hermu k'misha hermi damyan. How could Beis Hillel allow this? Hakol tu mechitzos. So you see clearly that Rabbi Yossi holds matana shelo hermu is lav k'misha hermi damyan, which takes us back to square one. We have a dik from the Brisa habig vulen loike shalosh. Why are you loike shalosh? It's lav k'misha hermi damyan. And if it never entered Yerushalayim, then there's no lav. And if it entered in its state of Ma'aser Sheni and then left, it's poshut that you get malchus. And if it entered in a state of Tevel, Yerushalayim wouldn't be koilet. You shouldn't get malchus because matana shalahermu is lav k'misha hormidah. So we are stuck because this brisa seems to indicate that the chiyuv, the iser, to eat Ma'aser Sheni out of Yerushalayim is chal even if the peiros never entered Yerushalayim. That's what we're stuck on. So let me just finish the thought. So Omar Rabba, it's not a kasha at all. There's two halachas that we're talking about. There's the halacha here of once it's in Yerushalayim, if you eat it out of Yerushalayim, you get malchus. And the second halacha is once it's in Yerushalayim, you cannot be poided anymore. There's two halachas that being in Yerushalayim will impact. Zok Gemara, mechitza lecho deraisa. The iser deraisa to eat Ma'aser Sheni that was once in Yerushalayim and now left Yerushalayim, that's an iser deraisa. Mechitza likloit, but the fact that the mechitza is koilet and once you take it out, you can no longer be poided, that's not a deraisa. That's only a derabbanan. So therefore, v'chi gozer rabbanan, where were the rabbanan gozer that you're not allowed to be poida once it was in Yerushalayim? That's ki isa be'edi. That's not in a tevel form. That's if it's in its real Ma'aser Sheni form. If real Ma'aser Sheni already separated shows up in Yerushalayim, you could no longer be poida. But that doesn't mean that if you took it out, you're allowed to eat it. You're not allowed to eat it. So you will get malchus for it. You're not allowed to eat it. So even though you hold maybe lav k'misha, nevertheless, once the tevel is in there, it's koilet. We say that the shloim is koilet, and if you eat it outside, you'll get malchus. However, you would still be allowed to be poided if you wanted. So therefore, it's not a problem. Why Rabbi Yossi can hold like Beis Hillel? Because all Beis Hillel says is you can still be poided. So really, he might hold matana shalahermu is kamisha hermidomyan, and that's why even though the tevel was in Yerushalayim, or once the tevel was in Yerushalayim, if you take it out of Yerushalayim and you eat it, you will get malchus, but you could still be poided because that you can't be poided once it was in Yerushalayim is only a derabbanan, and the derabbanan only made that gzeira if it was actual Ma'aser Sheni, not if it was tevel. And now comes the final punchline. Ravina Amar, I have a different case. It's kagoyin the nokit lebekani. The chiddush. What would we had a kasha? If it's speaking where it came into Yerushalayim, it came in actually as Ma'aser Sheni, and then it left. I don't need. That's not a chiddush that you get malchus. It's a textbook case. So what's the chiddush? Zokt Ravina. Maybe the case was where it never entered Yerushalayim. You entered Yerushalayim and you had it on the stick out, and maybe the chiddush of the brisa is that it's paskening Papa Shaila. Papa didn't know is that called entered Yerushalayim or not, and the chiddush of this brisa would be that it's considered entering Yerushalayim. The tivshed boy Papa would be able to use this brisa to be pushed the Shaila of Papa that if you're inside Yerushalayim and you have it on a long stick and it's connected to you, that's considered mimluacha. It's considered in Yerushalayim with you, and therefore it would be usher to eat outside of Yerushalayim. And if you ate it, you would get malchus.
More shred, I think I'm all about to
Quickly clarify this way. There's a definition that's a abundant definition of what is considered Ma'aser Sheni, and because of that, we give it their rights.
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
What?
I don't know any, right here, right now, I don't know of a Rabbanan definition of Ma'aser Sheni versus the Raisa definition.
Definition of height.
Of koilet, what's koilet?
Of when it is considered.
When it's considered in Yerushalayim.
Right.
So the Rabbanan made a gzera, the Rabbanan made a gzera that you cannot be poida Ma'aser Sheni once it was in Yerushalayim.
Right.
The Torah says Raisa, once it's in Yerushalayim, if you eat it outside, you get malchus.
So
The Rabbanan said that you also get.
I'm not saying this is bad or good. I'm just saying that it means that the Rabbanan gave you, it's the Rabbanan's decision that gave you the Deraisa Malchus.
No, the malchus is for eating it. No, the Raisa, no. We're talking about two different things. The question of malchus has nothing to do with whether you're poided or not. There's a shayla, can you be poided or not? There's no malchus involved. Malchus is if you ate it. That the Rabbanan have no involvement in that. That the Torah says.
Well,
what did you do Yerushalayim? If you eat it, you get malchus.
You could only get malchus if you ate something that entered Yerushalayim.
And it didn't. If it entered Yerushalayim, even in its tevel state, you're going to get malchus no matter. The Rabbanan, the Raisa, everybody agrees you get malchus. The Rabbanan is saying you could be poided still. But if you were not poided and you ate it outside Yerushalayim, you're telling me, what if I was poided? So there, if I was poided and I ate it outside Yerushalayim, that there the Rabbanan, by saying that I can be poided, or by saying I can't be poided, I'm giving malchus for that. If you would hold you couldn't be poided. So what you're saying is, if I brought actual Ma'aser Sheni into Yerushalayim, okay, and then I brought it out, Midaraisa, I should be able to be poided. Midarabanan, we can't be poided. So in such a case, you would get malchus based on the Rabbanan. In such a case, the Rabbanan saying that you can't be poided will impact the law. Okay?
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying
it happens a lot. The Rabbanan status determines what the deraisa is, and we actually just had it. We just had it with Ori Miklat. What was, I don't remember what the case was, but we had it in the case of Ori Miklat. I don't remember what it was. Now we're into another set of lavin that you get malchus for. Someone tears his hair out. We're going to soon see that's as a reaction to intense grief due to the loss of a loved one. There's an Isra law for it. And the pious, right? And someone who destroys his beard. Someone who pierces his skin, he scratches his skin, also as an expression of grief. Chayiv, these are all chayiv malchus. What happens if sarat sarita achas? If you did one cut, but al chamisha mason for 5 mason, or chamisha sritos al meisechet, or you cut yourself 5 times in an expression of grief for 1 mace. Chayiv al kolachas v'achas. There's a separate set of malchus for each one of these violations. Al roish time, cutting off your payas. There's an opportunity to be over to 11. You can cut off your right payah, and you can cut off your left payah. Achas mikan, v'achas mikan. But al zokin, there's actually 5 places that if you cut your beard, you'll be chayiv malchus. Shtayim mikan, 2 on either side. Shtayim mikan, v'achas milamata. There's a multi-way machloikus in the Rishonim what this means. Rashi learns the shtayim mikan and shtayim mikan are, the first place is where your jaw meets your skull. So shaving over here and shaving over here. The second 2 places, we're going to discuss that in a minute. What you're cutting with, we didn't discuss yet. The second place is over here in the middle of your jaw, on the right, on the left, and the last place is at your chin. So those are the 5 places according to Rashi. Rabbi Eliezer said, if you did one massive shave, im nitlu kulon ka'achas, einei chayiv ala achas, there would only be 1 chiyuv. Now we're going to discuss what you cut with. Zok tanakamo ve'nechayiv achi talenu besar. You're only chayiv if you cut it off with a razor, as Moshe said. But Rabbi Eliezer Aimer afilu loktoi b'melaket or b'rehitni, even if you use some type of tweezers, chayiv you would still be chayiv for the deraisa of cutting your beard. Now the Gemara is going to get into the details. Tanu Rabban. It says in the pasuk, there's two psukim that we're going to be analyzing. One is in Vayikra, which is actually talking to the Kohanim. I believe it's an Emor. It says, "Lo yikru karcha b'roisham, ufa'asa kanam lo yigalechu, uvivsaram lo yisrutu sarates." Then we have a pasuk in Devarim that is referring to all of Klal Yisrael. Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. All of Klal Yisrael are the children of the Rebbeinu Shloim. Loisis goydedu, which also means cutting your skin. The Gemara is going to talk about it later. V'lasesimu karcha b'nei nechem l'meis. You shouldn't rip your hair between your eyes. Here it says rosham, your head. Here it just says between your eyes. The Gemara is going to tell us that loisis goydedu and yisrutu sarates both mean cutting your skin, but there's going to be some nuances between them. So let's have a look at what it says. Lo yikruchu yochol afilu kereach or korach arba v'chomesh krichos. Moshe, here's where I need your help. Yochol afilu korach, even if he tore out arba v'chomesh krichos 4 or 5, lo yechayiv el achas. I would have thought that it's one big chiyuv for that whole situation. Talmud lomer lo yikruchu korcha. Each individual karcha is a violation. L'chayiv al kol karcha v'karcha. So if you pull out your hair once, twice, 3 times, every time you pull it out, you get petch for it. I guess eventually you'll realize that it's too painful. It's not worth pulling anymore, right? Assuming that you still have left what to pull. Dias nach chickens, ich have no skills, right? Beroisham. It says in the Bible, Beroisham. What do you learn from Beroisham? Ma Talmud loimer. What is it teaching us? In Devarim, lemeis for a maze. Vibalt in Devarim, it says, where are you not allowed to tear out your hair? In between your eyes. I guess if you have a unibrow, or maybe it means above where your totopos is, maybe it means up here. You might think it's only in the center. How do you know anywhere in your head where you will pull out a hair? As an expression of grief, how do you know that you'll be chayv malchus? From the parsha in Emor, I only know that applies to Kehanim. Why? Shariba behena kosev mitzvah yiserais. The Kohen has many restrictions, so maybe this is one restriction that applies to Kehanim and not to Yisraelim. Yisrael minayin. That Gemara never can't karcha v'nemer nahalim karcha. And the Halim is speaking to Bnei Yisrael, and we can learn more things from each other. We have some reciprocity in learning from one to the other. Just like it says by the Kohen, and we learned each individual tear is going to lead to a Chiv Malchus, and v'chayiv ala rosh kevenu einayim, because by the Kohen it says b'rosham, anywhere on the head. Afghan, so too, when we're talking about for all of Klal Yisrael, chayiv al kol korcha v'korcha, for each individual tear there'll be a separate Chiv Malchus, and v'chayiv ala rosh kevenu einayim. I guess Bayam, which is an example of where someone might do it, but allow that anywhere in the hair that you pull out hair will be chayiv. Umal lahal al meis. Over there it says it says by Devarim it says loises godu lasimu karcha benem lameis. So there it means it's in response to a mace. That's the only time where there's a lav. Afghan, so too, by the Kohen, it says loikuf karcha. It's only in response to the grief of the mace. Afghan al mace. Period. So Frank the Gemara, at the beginning of the brayso, you said you could be over 4 or 5 times. So let's look at the practical thing. What happened that would trigger 4 or 5 malchus? What exactly happened? So the coin, the Eta, don't tear your hair out, and he tears it out. Don't tear it out, and he tears it out. So if this happened 5 times, with 5 ashrois, pshita, do I need a brayso to tell me that when you're over 5 averos, and each one you're warned for, you get 5 malchus? That's definitely not what the chiddush of this brayso is. So it must be telling us something that's not as pashut. Ela b'chad asra. He gave 1 asra. Don't pull your hair out, and then you pull your hair out 5 times. Not you, somebody else. We don't know. Only such a person will get 5. For 1 asra, you don't get 5 malchus. Let's look at a nazir. But not be learned. Nazir shoy sayayin kol hayoyim. He was warned at the beginning of the day, don't drink wine, and he drank wine. He partied the whole day. Einay chayiv alachas. Will only be chayiv 1 malchus.
That's one continuous thing that he's doing.
drinking is one issue, here is an issue on each of the 5 spots.
I'm happy you raised that. Hold that thought for a second. Amrulai, what if they warned him al tishta, v'shoisa, then it's chayiv al kalachas v'achas. So over here as well, with one asra, it shouldn't be chayiv. I know you're kasha, but we'll get to that in a second. So tomorrow loy tricha, you know what the case is? It was al dam v'asachas. What did he do? He took 5 fingers and he put a chemical on each one of his fingers that burns the hair immediately, like those shaving chemicals that some people in yeshiva used to use, that the whole yeshiva smelled along with the gala, right? And he goes on the head, boom, the sach chomish and spoils of nasha, which is this chemical. I think nasha in English means nasty, right? V'osvinu b'vasachas, and he put it on his hair in one shot. So it's one ma'isa. That one asra splits off into 5. And Rashi says something very interesting. If you look right across here in Rashi kivan, or just not Rashi, the Rivan. Kivan de bebas achas kovid. I made you one asra, and you did 5 lavin simultaneously. So there's no reason to say why the asra should be on finger 1 over finger 2, even the middle finger. So the teretz is it's on all of them. So you were talking about maybe there's, when you're tearing hair out in 5 different places, drinking wine is the same thing. That's what you wanted to time. So if I remember correctly, there's a very long Tosfos over here, and I skimmed through it, but I think he actually looks at it completely different than you. So let's have a look. The table of Tosfos, even if you put all 5 fingers on at one shot, akati my tirits. How does it answer the question? Given the leka lachada asra, since there's only one asra, amay mechayefei. Right? Rashi says it because you don't know where it should be chal, so it's chal on all 5. V'mishum the asa bevasachas mabekach. Why should that make a difference? Given the chad lavika, there's one lav. Let me ask you a question, for Tosfos. If someone has a big piece of chaylev, are you going to tell me he's going to get a separate malchus for each piece of chaylev? Uvechad asra was one asra. Mi mechayev shtei malchus. Mishum dehaveli asra al kol chada v'chada alavi kazayis. The yesh lemers of Tosfos, the shiny hacha, the golden craw. Here the pasuk tells us al kol echad ve'echad. I went into the Bach and Gimel, the golden craw, the chayiv akol karcha v'karcha, the karchos mechalkos k'maygufin mechalkos, which is what you said, I believe, right? Which is exactly what you said. Miu kasha lama hutrich lefarish b'karcha the al yidei nasha. Why did it have to be simultaneously through this Sam look me b'karcha b'yadoi seer hey karchas b'vazachas. Why can't you say he pulled it out with his hand in 5 places in one shot? I guess Tosfos shows how you could do it. So then he says, "When we come up like kasher mehel the nazir, the shiny yacha, the goldy craw, the karchas mechalkos, k'magufu mechlakin," which is exactly what Moshe wanted to say. But then it's still shver, because why could you do it that way? So he said, "V'yeshleimet le mesukma the karcha, the karach b'yodi b'vasachas, mishum the karach b'yodi karcha b'kamecha." I guess physically it's impossible to do. V'akol lechad b'liyav seksir time. If you're pulling it in 5 places, but you grab it with once, it's going to pull one chunk out. That one chunk will all be connected. There won't be hair in between. But if you just touch 5 spots, that will be 5 individual bald spots. Okay, Tosfos does talk about drinking wine, but I believe what you're asking is mamish what Tosfos says over here, why it's separate. But Tosfos has it for a kasha. Okay, gewaltig. So Tosfos says that the reason why here it would be 5 is in fact because the Torah does make a chiyuv for each karcha. So zok to Gemara, the kama sheer karcha. Lemaisa, how much hair do you have to tear out? How big is that hole? That's mechayv you. Rav Huna Omer kidei sheyirami roisha, just enough that you can see some scalp. Rabbi Yochanan Omer mishum Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon, it's kigris. It has to be a bald spot the size of a dime. A gris is around a dime. Kitanoi kamashir karcha is kigris acher marmim kidei sheyirami roisha. Amar Rabbi Chaviva, it's actually a 3-way machlokes. Pligaba talsa tanoi. Chad Amar kigris, like we had. Chad Amar kidei sheyirami roisha, which we had. The third sheet is kishtei cyrus. If you merely pull out 2 hairs on a mace, there's the lav. The iga the mapik shtei cyrus. There are those who say no, 2 cyrus is not enough to create a chiyuv. Uma'ayil b'chadosha. Adosha is a lot smaller than a dime, but it's more than 2 hairs. V'simonech. How do you know which one we're substituting with kadosha? We're saying we're substituting shtei cyrus. Maybe you should substitute kigris with kadosha. V'simonech b'heres kigris u'michyot b'chadosha, meaning they're both in existence. Both those shiurim stand is the shtei cyrus that don't stand. Frekt Rashi. What about the Kadesh Yermi Roishai? Maybe that doesn't stand. We don't have a simon for that. So Rashi, that's poshut that it's on its own because
It's bigger than all of them.
no, it doesn't say an exact shear. It just means you could see. Okay. Dr. Gemara back. Tana we learned. Hanoitel mole peazug b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to cut your hair on Shabbos. What if you cut how much? The amount of a tip of a scissor. Very vague how much that is. Chayv will be chayv. The kama mole peazug. How much is that? Amar b'dashtaim. If you cut 2 hairs, you're going to be chayiv for cutting. What's the malacha? Goizes. Okay.
This has nothing to do, this is on Shabbos, this is Shabbos.
Now we're talking about Shabbos, right? But Frank the Gemara, if you read the whole brisa by Shabbos, it says Hanoitel Molei Peazug b'Shabbos Chayiv lekarcha shtayim. So doesn't it make it sound like for karcha it's 2 hairs, but for Shabbos it's Peazug and they're not the same? Dr. Gemara Vatanya lekarcha shtayim. Dr. No Ema v'chein lekarcha shtayim. It means Molei Peazug and lekarcha shtayim. How come it doesn't say also lekarcha Peazug? Why doesn't it say that? It's like the famous story where somebody asks, what does Yankel do for a living? Oh, Yankel is a roof. And what does his brother do? Oh, his brother's Ochaganav. So that's what this is doing over here. Tanya Nami Hachi. Hanoitel mole piazug b'Shabbos chayiv the kama mole piazug shtayim. Now is the fun part. Rabbi Lezer Merach is only 1 hair. Umoidim chacham Rabbi Lezer, it's 1 hair. If you have black hair and you have a white hair growing, that 1 hair is a very chashav azach. You want to get rid of it. That 1 hair, if you pull out, is going to be a significant. It's an achshave type of hair, and you'll be chayiv even for 1. And pulling out a white hair is more than just a Shabbos violation. Now, the Rishonim are medayik. It says mishum shenemar that it's not a deraisa to the rabbanon, but there is a machloikis Rishonim here if it's an isur deraisa or an isur rabbanon. I remember my father asked Rabbi Loi when he first came if he's allowed to use. There was something called Grecian Formula 16. It was some type of thing that you put in here that would make your hair black or would stop it. Rabbi Loi said you can't use it, and my father used to use it until Rabbi Loi said no, and he stopped using it, and it caused him so much agmas nefesh that his hair became white right after that.
And we're not talking about butter.
That's right. So Akiva asked about butter. Would there be an issue on butter not on food? Would there be issue on butter?
No, it's not with food. It's with anything that's creating a separation of something that's ma'urav with each other. If they're ma'urav with each other, so you could say that they're not really ma'urav because you have
Hair each hair is a different place.
whites and they're not ma'urav.
I hear.
You come to the Friday afternoon shir like a Shabbat.
Gewaltig. So we're talking about here. This has to do with the concept of akshavei. So I said over a word.
It's not that the white one is akshav.
I understand.
The remaining blacks are the akshav.
No, this is a choshev zachmi that I want to get rid of it.
Really?
So I said over a story yesterday that was related to ben achaya hanacheles uben achaya shaloisa achel. It says that all the way to the end of the parsha, lahavdul ben atome uben ator uben achaya nacheles uben achaya shaloisa achel. So right after that, it's off balance because ben atome uben ator tome is first, and then it's ben achaya nacheles. That's the Torah one first. Why is it that way? So the Gemara to the Ksaf Sofer compares this and says this is negayed to a Gemara in Yuma Pebeis Amid Beis, where there was a woman in Rebbe's times on Yom Kippur. She was pregnant and she had a tremendous craving to eat because she smelled something and she needed to eat. So we know to Sakonis Nefashos for a woman who has a craving. So they asked Rebbe what to do. So Rebbe said, whisper into her ear that it's Yom Kippur, and maybe she'll be able to overcome her craving. And that's what they did, and she was able to overcome her craving. You know who the child that was born from that mother? Rabbi Yochanan. It wasn't Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, but Rabbi Yochanan's also gone to school, right? Now, the story repeated itself, and the other woman was not able to control her, and they gave her to eat. And who was born from her? Shapsoi Atzar Peri. And I said he was the ultimate liberal because he's a very big Russia. Why? Because he used to corner the market and hoard the Paris so that the prices should go up. And Rashi says there's nothing more disgusting and vile than someone who makes prices go up like a liberal government who causes inflation. And there was not a political schmooze, it was mamash advar Torah. Right? Avada. It's a vile thing when you hurt the public by making things, their lives, unaffordable. But a koponim. So now Rashi doesn't need his eskama. And so now we have a beautiful pshat. The chaya, the woman who was pregnant who ate, who's parallel to the tamei, and the woman who's giving birth who's a kaddish v'torah because she won't eat on Yom Kippur even though she had that craving. So that's what the Ksav Sofer says. So how's that negated here? Fragt Rabbi Yisrael Salanter a gewaltige Sache. Why didn't they just feed her pachas mikashir? A lot of people have to eat on Yom Kippur. They eat in little bronfen glazes. What's the problem? Teretz is, it says over there, Kara loy Rebbe. Rebbe said, quoted a pasuk in Yirmiyah related to this. And the lashon pasuk is, I can't remember it exactly. Lashon pasuk is, Oidcha bebaten akademcha. The Kadosh Baruch Hu was already makir Rabbi Yochanan in the beten. Why? Because he saw this mother. He didn't know who Rabbi Yochanan was. Rabbi Yochanan wasn't there yet. She's the Kaddish. The question is, why didn't they just feed a pachas mikshir? The tesis is because Rabbi Yochanan holds Chatzi Shir as also min Torah. So the Rebbeinu Shalom already was makir that this would be Rabbi Yochanan who holds Chatzi Shir as also min Torah. And one of the reasons why he holds Chatzi Shir as also min Torah is because of Achshavei. If you want to eat that Chatzi Shir, that means you were machshavit. So now it could create an issur. Okay.
Just how do you get to? How do you know if the person? I mean, can we ask him if he did 5 cuts and for
We know that you would need 8 to give malchus. You need to have 8 of them.
But how do you, the Mishnah says the word Asherchit Achas al Meis and started Shrita Achas al Hamesh Shrita al Meis Ach.
Right.
How do you know whether those Hamesh Shritas are on Meis Achad?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's chomesh. He gets 5 patches. You might ask him if it's 1 for 5 maces. How do you know? Right. So I think that's what the Gersa plays with. I think it means 5 for 5. 1 for 5 is 1 mace, so you wouldn't get 5 malchus.
Oh, that was my question.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing it up so we can speak it out. Yeah, I believe that's why there's a Gersa change. I think it has to be 5. The Mishnah saying if it's 5 for 5, but even 5 for 1 would still be high. Yeah, I think that's fun. Okay, let's see the Gemara weiter. A makiv pas roishoy, somebody who cuts off his payas gets malchus. Tanu rabbanim pas roishoy, soif roishoy. The end of his head. What does that mean? Veza soif roishoy zamashvet tzedov lachayri oznei ulopadachtim. You know, right above your ear, no hair grows. So let's say you put your finger on that hairline right above your ear, and you draw a straight line to the top of your forehead, which is where your payas end. If you cut that area below that line, that is what we're talking about, cutting your payas. That leads to a chiv malchus. Tani Tana Kameder of Chista. You know who gets malchus? Echad Amakiv, the barber gets the malchus for cutting your payas. The Echad Anikiv, and the guy snoring in a chair gets malchus as well. So Chista said, I don't understand. Someone who's innocently eating dates out of a basket, he's doing nothing wrong. What did he do wrong, the Nika? Why should he get malchus?
No.
But he didn't do a meiser.
And they both have a straw, and he wasn't like
But he didn't do a meiser.
He wasn't like that.
Doesn't make a difference. It's a lav shem meiser. And like a law.
It's his head.
Yeah.
Oh, so you were bringing up good points. So hold that point. Hold the point. The Amr Lachmani, who told you this halacha? It must be Rabbi Yehuda, the Amr Lav Shem B'Maiser, like in the law. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda said that the only reason why you don't get malchus for noisar is because it's a lav nitik lasei. But on them you get malchus, right? Even though it's a surah sovik, even though it's a lav shem b'maiser. So Rav Aimer, you know what happened? You know when the nikav gets malchus? If he's giving himself a haircut. If he's giving himself a haircut, and then he's a makav and the nikav, but he gets 2 malchus. The chiddush is they get 2 malchus. One out makav, one out nikav, but it's a hekatibus where the nikav is doing a meiser. Or the second shot, which was your teretz, Rabashi Yomer b'Misayeya. Here, from here to here, cut. Here, this is where you should cut. So if you're helping the barber, you're moving along with him. The V'divrei Kol, everybody will agree there. The person whose pace gets cut also gets patch.
Would you eat straight and you stick it down with a stick? Or you
I'm not
it's
understanding
an
what you're
angle.
saying. If someone
It's not-
forces food down there,
it's not-
see, food is different because
No, he sits there.
shekain henna. We said misasik b'chalovim v'arayis is chayiv mipnei shenahenna. So when you're eating, you have enough from the food that might have a different set of rules. I don't know if we'll have a malchus, but it says misasik b'chalovim v'arayis gets malchus shechein henna. Kander abadim pa'as ziknoi is soif ziknoi. What is soif ziknoi? Shiboila ziknoi. It means all those 5 areas that we discussed earlier. Why is it called shiboilas? Rashi says because where it grows out, it looks like it's a shiboilas. I mean, if you didn't take a shower for a long time, it might look like a shiboilas. So I don't really know how Rashi visualizes. Let's look at Rashi. Rashi says, I keep on calling him Rashi. It's not Rashi. Who says it? Who says it? Someone says that the reason here, maybe he brings down from somebody what the shiboiles is. Let me see what he says over here about the shiboiles of Zion. So he brings down in the Quorum shiboiles, yeah. Either machmashura shaseir sheyesham shedoi mixas l'shiboiles. The row of hair there looks like a shiboiles. Again, I don't see it. Because your skin sticks out there a little bit by your. I'm not sure. Yeah, could be, but I'm not sure exactly what it means. But the Gemara calls it shiboilas. Zok the Gemara. Zok the Gemara weiter. Where are we up to? If you even make one cut, tarnu rabban. Again, let's look at the words of the pasuk so we know what we're analyzing. It says. V'seret lo nefesh lo situ b'fsarchem. A seret for a nefesh you shouldn't put in. U'ksoivis kaka lo situ b'chemani Hashem. So we're focused on the first half of the pasuk. V'seret lo nefesh lo situ b'fsarchem. So zok the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan. V'seret yochal afilu saret al beisoi shenofal al svinosoi shetava b'yam. You might think if you cut yourself to express grief for some other tragedy that befell you, that would also have a chiv lav. It's only if it's expressing grief over the loss of a loved one. How do you know that you get 5 malchus for 5 sritos? For each individual seret, now how you know from this seret, I believe Rashi has 2 pshatim. Rashi says one shot, the moti l'michtav lo nefesh lo sisratu, which would be much more concise. The mokim v'seret lo nefesh lo sitnu, it's very wordy. The other shot of lashon acher, the vav of v'seret is what's being marba per slice. Dr. Gemara Rabbi Yosy Omer minayin l'misaret shrita achas al hey mesim shehu chayiv al kol achas v'achas. What does the base say? So chayiv al kol echad echad tamalomer lo nefesh l'chayiv al kol nefesh b'nefesh to be mechayiv you on every nefesh. Now I understood that. Are you only doing one?
Mice? That's so weird. You're doing one mice.
Yeah, so you're doing one ma'isa. I think you're doing ma'isa, but you learned it from a limud of lo nefesh. Correct the Gemara, but didn't we use lo nefesh to tell you? Didn't we use it to tell you that it's only for a grief of the loss of a loved one? So how could you learn that you get 5 malchus? So what I told Moshe a minute ago might be wrong. Could be by karchot the same thing. 1 for 5 would also get 5 malchus. I thought it was 5 for 5. Dr. Gemara, Kasover Rabbi Yosy holds Shrita Gedida Achasi. So this is a massive chiddush. Shrita Gedida, it says what it's going to do. They're both exactly the same thing, and it doesn't matter if you did it with a you did it by hand. Either way, it's called Shrita and it's called Gedida. So basically, Shrita and Gedida are the same. It's 2 lavin for the same avera. Shrita Gedida Achasi. And by Gedida it says Lames. So therefore I don't need Lanefesh to tell Lames. So I can use Lanefesh and say that if you did it for 5 Mesim, you get 5 Pech. So here Rabbi Yosy clearly said that Shrita and Gedida include, each one includes Sai B'Yad and Sai B'Keli. Amar Shmuel, the same thing. Hamasaret B'Chli Chayiv, because Seret is included in a Kli, with a Kli and without a Kli, and Gedida as well. Shmuel seems to say the same as Rabbi Yosy.
Not yad, or is not saying?
No matter what. No matter what, yeah. Gemara asks, Meisvei, Srita Ugedida Achasi, imagine they're the same action, Elos Srita B'Yad Ugedida B'Chli. So, but Shmuel said, Misaret is B'Chli Chayiv. The Brisa says, it wouldn't be Chayiv, because Srita is B'Yad. So, Shver from Shmuel, on Shmuel, from the Brisa. So, who done Rabbi Yosy? Clearly, Rabbi Yosy argues on the Brisa, because Rabbi Yosy said, Srita Ugedida Achasi, and they include both a prohibition with the keli or with the hand, and that's how Shmuel holds. Okay, we could stop here, and we will mention tomorrow. So right now we're one full blot ahead. So Chof Aleph is Tuesday's blot. On Tuesday and Wednesday, I hope again to do 3 blot, which will make us 2 blot ahead. And then, I'm sorry, on Monday and Tuesday, I hope to do 3 blot, if I'm able to, which will make us 2 blot ahead. And then Wednesday and Thursday, again, do 3 blot, which will now make me a full 3 blot ahead, which means we'll be up to next Monday's blot. So even though I'm missing Friday, Shabbos, and Sunday, we'll be up to date. And what I'd like to do, and I want to ask, what I want to do, and before I want to shut off the recording.